Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where if I get the microphone and chair adjusted, we will begin talking about one of the great musicians of all time who's still going strong. And this is, of course, Narada Michael Walden. Now, as a drummer and as someone who loves jazz fusion music, my introduction to Mr. Walden came at the same time that most people in the wider music world discovered him when he became the drummer for the second incarnation of the Mahavishnu Orchestra. So obviously the great Billy Cobham was in the drum chair for the first incarnation, and for the second, he brought Michael Walden in. And this was also the lineup that featured Jean-Luc Ponty on violin, fresh out of Zappa's band, and the great Gail Moran on vocals and keyboards, who is the widow of the wonderful Chick Corea. Ralph Armstrong, of course, on the wonderful fretless bass. And this lineup really rocked. The first lineup, of course, legendary, but because of the hoopla that surrounded the first lineup, because, the first of anything, sometimes the second lineup that recorded Apocalypse and Visions of the Emerald Beyond, and most of it went on to record Inner Worlds, it kind of gets overshadowed. They were just as good as a band. And Narada Michael Walden's drumming was so excellent. I don't know why it hasn't been fully officially released. Bits of it have, but parts of a wonderful 1974 performance from this version of the Mahavishnu Orchestra at the Montreux Jazz Festival exist. Check it out. It's wild, including what feels like a half-hour drum solo by Narada Michael Walden. It's not that long, but it's pretty long. And he started a solo career at around this time, slightly after as well. And some of his albums were great. He had a wonderful one straight out of the gate with Garden of Love Light, and all of his early stuff, Awakening, I Cry, I Smile, wonderful stuff. If you like soulful jazz fusion that's listenable, has some prog rock elements, great musicianship, and I mean the top musicianship, you will love these albums. And the best part is they're all there available for you to listen to on your Spotify's and your Titles and your Amazons and your Apples and all the rest of it. The reason I'm mentioning him today is because he was also one of the great producers. People talk about, Trevor Horn creating an 80s sound, but in the world of soul, R&B, and pop music derived from soul and R&B, you could say that Narada Michael Walden was as, if not more important, because it was on this day that Whitney Houston broke records for being the most awarded female artist of all time. And it was Narada Michael Walden who really propelled Whitney Houston into the spotlight as her first producer. Whitney would have probably always been big with a voice that wonderful, but the Whitney Houston we know and love, a lot of her early success, which translated into a later success, is because of Narada Michael Walden. He produced for so many great artists. Angela Barfield, one of the great vocalists of all time, when she was trying to get more of a pop oriented and less jazz oriented sound. He produced some great albums. And he wasn't limited to any one genre. He, of course, did work with the wonderful Natalie Cole, the great Carl Carlton, Sister Sledge, but he also worked with rock groups, Clarence Clemens from the E Street Band, Sheena Easton, who was sort of pop, soul, rock, electro funk, Starship with the great Mickey Thomas. The list goes on. Elton John, Al Green, Steve Winwood, this Santana, Journey in very recent years. The list goes on. And he also played with a lot of great artists. My Spanish Heart, a great Chick Corea album. He's all over that playing the drums. Alfonso Johnson's Moon Shadows. Listen to that album. If I can force you to do anything, you will listen to that. Played with Robert Fripp. Played on what I think is probably Jeff Beck's best album, Wired, which I sometimes call Weird, from 1976. His drums are all over that. Played with Tommy Bolin. Other stuff with John McLaughlin after Mahavishnu. The list goes on. Such a talented guy with a great ear for talent, great at developing talent, wonderful drummer. No, very few people could have stepped in to Billy Cobham's shoes in Mahavishnu Orchestra, but Narada Michael Walden did, and he pulled it off brilliantly. But Check out his solo albums, especially the first 4 or 5. Really listen to those because you are going to love them. He wrote the stuff, he arranged it, he's drumming it, he does vocal work, and it all works really, really well. So while his fame and fortune, certainly the fortune, came from his great production and artist development. Whitney Houston is sort of his protege in many ways. His solo stuff is something that you shouldn't sleep on. Definitely check it out. If jazz fusion stuff could easily get to #1, it would have been in the late 70s into the early and mid 80s. Like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Take care.